Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. The Mimi and Greg Show is back. After too long of a hiatus, I catch up with the legendary Greg Rucka as he gives us the inside scoop on The Old Guard 2 and the long-awaited return of Lazarus with Fallen issue number 1. Spoiler alert, if you're not caught up, consider this your warning. We go full geek mode on story arcs, character updates, and some behind-the-scenes insight you won't want to miss. Plus, we talk about comic industry updates and what's coming next. Whether you're a longtime Rucka fan or new to the world of The Old Guard and Lazarus, this episode is so much fun. I miss my dear friend Greg, and I'm so glad we got to catch up. If you aren't already subscribed to his newsletter, Front Towards Enemy, do yourself a favor and sign up immediately. It's free, it's brilliant, and it's the perfect way to stay up to date on all things Rucka and get a little bit of his insight. For those that don't already know, Greg Rucka is a New York Times best-selling author of hundreds of comics and nearly 24 novels. He is also the writer for his critically acclaimed and award-winning film, The Old Guard, starring Charlize Theron, and now The Old Guard 2, which is currently showing on Netflix. I'm loving these conversations and hope you do too. If you do, please rate my podcast on your platform of choice and share it with others. If you would like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going and support the work I do and have Rucka on the show more often, please visit my website or patreon.com/SifuMimiChan. For comments or suggestions, reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello. Spoilers right up front.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's Greg Rucka. Quick, turn it off.
Oh my God. Mimi and Greg show's back. What's happening? Twice this year.
We'll get back into it. It's been busy.
Has it though? What's going on in life? How is that possible? Of course it's been busy. I know.
There's been some travel. There's been some stuff.
I mean, if our loyal listeners and viewers are paying attention, they would have known that you and I got to hang out in Australia at Nicola Scott's lair. She loved that, by the way, that it was a lair.
At the Scott Cave. Yeah.
At the Scott Cave. And it was fabulous. We had such a great time. Pretty much one of the highlights of our trip. And I know you think I'm just saying this, but everyone was like, oh, what did you see in New Zealand? And did you love Australia? And we're like,
hobbits. Hobbits. Yeah,
that was great. And it feels so bratty to be like, well, we've seen hobbits in before. So, but the thing is, literally, we went back to we loved spending time with Greg and Nicola when we were in New Zealand. That was amazing. And then we saw one of my best friends, Mark, in LA. And actually, those were the two highlights of our trip. It wasn't these exotic, amazing places. And maybe it's my age or that I've traveled, but it was the highlight.
I'm not sure that's... I mean, I think right now, especially right now, this moment, and I think for most people, if you look at say polling numbers and so on and so forth, we are very much in a place where, seeing nice things is wonderful and good, but community and companionship is really important right now.
Yeah.
I think it's vital, actually. I've been thinking about it a lot. I had something in the newsletter in May after we'd gone to my youngest graduation, coming out of that experience and listening to one of the speakers at her graduation talking about theater as a collective experience and the need of it and the loss of it.
Yeah.
Right. That we really have. And it sort of hit me, you get older, and I am older. And
me too. You're not alone.
but it was the first time I really realized, at my age, right, these experiences, there's a whole generation, if not 2 generations now, that do not have them. And at least one generation that in very large part has never had really has never pursued it. Now, I won't say they've never had the option, but the options have been radically and aggressively diminished. And it's from a variety of sources, right? You can't point to just one thing and say, well, this has led to the death of going to theater. This has led to the death of going to movies.
Yes.
Right. This has led to the death of water cooler conversations, where water cooler conversations are conversations where, your students before class are going, did you see that thing? Mm-hmm. Right. The water cooler being a metaphor. It doesn't have to be in an office. But thinking a lot about how we have, like, what we have lost in that, and how it relates to the growth of tribalism and the balkanization between people. And I think that it is something we need to address. There was a reason in the cradle of democracy, everybody gathered together to vote. Everybody came to the amphitheater. Everybody gathered in the agora. These were community and communal for both political, as in decisions of the polis, right? Mm-hmm. As in how they were governed,
right?
But also for the stories they told. And that sort of tied into this week's newsletter, right? Where, you look at the state of the world and kind of go, I'm sitting here making funny books. What is the merit of a funny book when the world is on fire? When literally the world is on fire.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You and I we've always talked when the world is on fire kind of thing. Like, when did we first really start? Oh, at the beginning of COVID. Got it. Like, yeah. And it's like, we are always talking when the world is on fire.
The fire has been worse or better
yes,
at times.
Yes.
And one could argue that, quote unquote, the world is always on fire.
Right. But really
that's not actually, but not like this. And it is different now. Mm-hmm. And it's different now for a variety of reasons. These are, for many of us, these are very hard times and we're aware of it.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, these are hard times and they are unaware of, and they're going to discover soon just how hard these times are.
Yeah. So I wonder if there's an ignorance is bliss moment, or like, is that a good thing, or is it not? Because sometimes you're like, just stay in the incubator a little longer before you step out into the shit.
That's so nuanced, Mimi. It becomes so nuanced, right? Because because how do you stay informed? Well, there's no longer a reliable means of information. Yeah. Now it's only vectors of propaganda and how skeptical or willing to be to embrace them. So, okay, ignorance isn't bliss. Ignorance is ignorance. Right?
True.
Being able to moderate and actively, we actively engage in the self-care of, all right, this is a fire hose, right? So, and if you stand in front of the fire hose, it hurts. It is not a pleasant thing.
No.
Right? You know what I mean? And so you got to dip in, mm-hmm. right? To stay informed, to be aware. But at the same time, if you stand under it, you're going to get knocked over and you're going to drown.
I think the challenge, because Oscar and I, as mentors at the school, as teachers, as those who have connectivity to such a diverse range of humans, we struggle with
the fact that we have young people who we want to be informed. We want them to pay attention, but we also don't want to ruin their lives and high school experiences. We want them to be able to go to a prom and enjoy it and not go, I shouldn't enjoy this at all because this and this and this is happening in the world. So like we find this like difficulty of like balancing this out. So the protest that happened, the No King's Day, you know, I went, I can't make it a school event by any means, but I was like, I am going. If anyone wants to be in a safe environment where as safe as it can be, I can't make guarantees, but I have a strategy plan. I have a special parking place. I have this, I have that. You'll be with other people. It's an open invite, but at the same time, I'm not going to push this or make anyone feel guilty. Right. But whether they decided to go or not wasn't really the thing. It was more, do you know this is happening and why? Do you know what's going on and why? Do you understand? And, you know, I actually had a 9-year-old come with me because, of course, his parents were going, but I actually interviewed them, and that's the podcast that's dropping next week, and a 10-year-old from Portland. That you actually have met. And and they went and they told me why. And that was really fascinating because there's like this really young dynamic and, you know, they may be spitting out rhetoric that they've heard their parents, but I asked questions that made me believe, hey, no, they're thinking. And so in some ways, it's like there's this younger generation that starts to sort of get it. And then that teenage generation, which are the future voters, some of them will be able to vote in the next election. They're the ones I really want to engage, but I also don't want them to not be teenagers. So it's this very difficult challenge of like,
but part
like you
of
said, the fire hose, like, let's get a little sprinkle on them, but I don't want to knock them over.
Part of being a teenager is advancing into that role of societal responsibility, though.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, look, I'm not looking to ruin anybody's day, but the flip side of it is, some of these things you can't sugarcoat, you know, some of these things, there's just no other way to describe what's going on. This is, you know, and it's insane and it's madness. And if you are 9/11 was 24 years ago.
Yes.
So there are 24-year-olds who don't have an experience of a world, right? 25, 26, 27-year-olds, 28-year-olds, 29-year-olds. 30-year-olds even who really can't remember a time when it wasn't like this. Right?
Yes.
And so, you know, having there is a need to engage, like, you know, and now we're dealing with sincerely and actively, an administration that is Orwellian in its attempts to erase and rewrite history.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how is that knowledge going to be preserved? Right? Whereas they are now in the business of changing what is truth. So, what is our obligation in the face of that?
Yeah.
You know, and our obligation in the face of that is to say the 10-year-old and say, but that is not true. That is not the way it used to be. That is not like, so, but look, all right. Did you want to talk about Lazarus?
I mean, the problem is you and I get going and it's like, and this is where I was going to pivot because obviously your Front Towards Enemy newsletter has been coming out and it's phenomenal. I've been telling everybody to read it. It's not very nice. It's fact. And then I've been forwarding it to people, especially because you've addressed a few things, and we will absolutely spoiler and talk about Lazarus because that came out as we're recording today. Yeah. And you were kind enough to allow me to read it earlier. And so that gives me
you got it. You got it a whole day in advance. Mimi.
Yeah, but there have been other times where you're like, okay, you can read this early. Yeah. And so I feel very privileged. But you know, kind of talking about your newsletter, you're like, you know, in the world of this, you're like, I'm making funnies. One is is not always funny what you're writing, but you are providing the self-care moment for so many of us. And so thank you for that. But I also really loved some of the highlights you've given, and I forwarded it to my local comic book shop to make sure they heard like the messaging of like why pre-orders are important, why comics are still important, but why also like the whole machine that's being broken down that has been for many years of engaging people in making sure they're on top of it and pre-ordering and being involved, and also just the value of comics as a medium and what it is and what it isn't, and just saying it in a nice 3-minute read. I don't even know how you're able to do that, because it's like, wow, you got all the information and it's like so succinct. But I also had to look up front towards enemy because it sounds so familiar, but I don't know. And then I was like, oh, it's on the front of a Claymore mine.
Claymore.
And what is a Claymore mine?
It's technically incorrect. On a Claymore, it's front toward enemy.
And you're towards.
And I'm towards, which is more, the facing. But yeah, somebody commenting saying, for a newsletter with that title, it's actually remarkably gentle and uplifting. I saw the movie Ballerina the Sunday before last. I went with Fraction and Kelly Sue.
Oh.
And Kelly Sue DeConnick and I have, going back several years, she has a dummy Claymore mine.
Yes.
That is one of her prized possessions. So there is a moment in the film where Eve, where the Ana de Armas character comes upon a stockpile of explosives, and lo and behold, there are claymores. And Kelly Sue got very excited. She was like, yes! So,
as she does.
Yeah. Ballerina, an experiment in ways to blow people up. Now.
Okay.
It's
very
like
deceiving title.
every one of the movies that they do, it seems to be less and less about a story and more about what sort of action sequences can we do? How can we kill people this time in inventive ways? We started with cars and guns and judo, and then we move in. This one is we use fire and explosives. Fire and explosives. There are a lot of explosives.
There's a lot of that. A lot of explosives. Yeah.
A lot of explosives.
Okay. So speaking of, I am explosives and being explosive. I am. Well, first of all, I want you to. I wrote it in my little Patreon blog thing, and I wore my other Lazarus shirt, the Change the World one, to the protest, because I felt like it had so many like double meanings and symbolism, but also it's such a cool shirt. So I was sporting that when I went to the protest, and I kind of shared to our readers and listeners, like kind of why. And there's so many parallels between the world we live in and the Lazarus world that you have created, and that you are unfortunately a psychic in how you write, and then it all becomes real. You call it a Cassandra, but yeah, I am wearing the Lazarus shirt today because it's June 25. And for our listeners who are a couple weeks, into this now, Lazarus has fallen into our laps, as we will say.
Issue 1 came out today.
Issue 1 is here, and oh man, I'm so excited. I texted Oscar yesterday, and I was like, I don't know what I enjoyed more, the back matter or the issue.
Hopefully the issue.
No, I did. I enjoyed the issue, and I scooted over to the Discord this morning and scrolled, and I thought it was so funny because somebody screenshotted the panel that I was going to post yesterday, but then I thought that would be rude to post it before everybody else got the issue, and so I was like,
it's a little spoilery. It's the Michael
wait.
panel,
right? It is the Michael panel, and then I'll show it here, but I'll also show it on the. I'll show it better on the screen, but
hard to read, but yeah,
it's hard to read, and I'll show it. I'll have the VAs do their thing, like our team does this amazing stuff. But basically, it talks about, my sister was killed by men who tried to enslave our family and failed. You yourself say that slavery in Carlisle territory is punishable by death. I freed your slave, sir, and I do it again. And oh man, that like really is like my favorite panel of the whole thing, other than of course the covers, which
Cover is
all
great.
hail Michael Lark.
I'm very fond of the reveal at the end, just the expressiveness of it. And we introduced some new characters at the end, the members of the of the Paris La Résistance.
La Résistance of the Free, yeah.
And the cell is led by a woman named Juliette. And there's a panel where and this is going to be easier in the second issue, because in issue B, they're in Paris. They speak French. And once again, just as a storytelling conflict, meaning an issue, I don't like it when it's really American centric and English centric to say, now we have characters and they are in a foreign country and they are speaking the language, but we're going to just put carrots around it to indicate.
I've seen that, the carrots to show.
Yeah, well, it's traditional, and in certain books it works really well, right? Okay. Like it makes perfect sense. It is never. I've never been comfortable with it in Lazarus, because Lazarus is very much a global story, right? It's about
it's very global,
being all around the world, and so. And that creates some obvious problems. Like, I haven't had my Russian characters speaking Russian. And God forbid if I did that, right, I would have to go to Ariana and be like, do you have a Cyrillic typeset? Like, you need to do, we need to keep the font going, but now it all needs to be in Cyrillic, right? And or by the same token, we're going to get, to the Lee family, is everybody speaking, in Chinese. I mean,
I don't know how that one would go.
Exactly. But in Paris, they're speaking French. So there's a lot of dialogue, predominantly in issue 2. Issue 2 is the one where it's the most heavy. But at the end of issue 1, Juliet's talking to her companions and they're speaking in French. So she's falling between French and English.
Yes.
And I think contextually it's understandable. The reader can follow it. If they don't have any French. There's that one panel where she's laughing. There's a panel where and Juliet is genuinely laughing, like heartily amused by something someone has said, and I'm very fond of that panel and that sequence. But all this to say, in issue 2, there is actually a complete translation. Like at the back of the issue, we reserved back matter space. Okay. Because there are a couple scenes in 2 where characters have no reason to not speak French.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Like it makes sense.
So they're only speaking
It's okay. I'll read Fallen 2 tomorrow.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so for that one, it's at the back of the issue, and literally we've got a note saying all this dialogue is translated.
Right. And me and my OCD, I'm there like looking up all the French. Because I'm like, I want to get every meaning in every word.
And you wouldn't believe, like, we bent over backwards on this. We were like, because I write the dialogue in English. I don't trust my friend. So I'll write the dialogue in English. I will translate it as best I can. I gave it to a friend who actually is French and works as a translator. Okay, yeah. And then he comes back and he's like, okay, this is idiomatic. I don't know what this means, right? Or what are you saying here? So, I think it works. Okay. But, we did one of the issues of in the X66 run was with the Morey family, and that there was dialogue in there in Spanish, and I wrote it with that issue with Aaron Duran, who speaks Spanish, but he speaks and has been raised with a Mexican Spanish.
Okay.
And David Macho, who is Santi's agent amongst many other people, right? Works with a lot of people in Spain in particular.
Right. It's different.
Sent us notes, and it was like, this is garbage. What is this?
Totally. And if you
so,
want like to be more confused, you can ask Oscar to read it for Caribbean Spanish, like for Puerto Rican, Dominican, like totally different again.
Exactly. People are, and then
it's South American.
And then in the first series, issues 27 and 28, where which were the Jonah issues, and I forget the name of the gentleman who I believe he had married a Dane, and he was like, we can get this translated for you. But we went over that. And on that one, Simon, we tried to do sort of the subtitle boxes connected to the actual word balloons. And that was probably the most visually successful methodology for it for me.
Yeah.
But Michael really didn't like it, and with good reason. It covers a lot of the art.
It kind of like takes away from the art.
It takes
it
so
can be
much
distracting
panel. It's effectively you're doubling the size of every balloon.
Yes.
And so it's one of those ones where we wrestle with this. So
yeah. And
so fair warning, there's some French in this, and then there's a lot of French in the next one.
Yeah,
but it's all translated
at the back.
On
my French is the way I see this.
You can just flip back and forth. You'll be able to, like, when you have the physical copy, you'll be able to be like, okay, I'm keeping my finger on this page.
Michael does such a great job too, because you kind of didn't, it's not like, it's just because I'm OCD, but like, you don't have to like translate it to know like, oh, I see what's happening here. They're part of the free. And, and I have to say, and you guys do such a great job, because I'm not like one of those, like, I figure out every mystery movie at the beginning of the film every time kind of person, and the first act and but I can tell you, I could feel it. I was like, I know who's coming at the end of this issue. And it's like, as I was reading, I was like, yes. And I was just like, I knew it. I knew he was going to be there. I don't know how or why or whatever, but that's because you all like kind of you led us there, but it's still surprising and exciting at the same time. So yeah.
I put less stock, the older I get, I put less and less stock in trying to surprise readers or trick anybody. I am, the older I get, the more invested I am in it's an odd way to put it, because it makes it seem like there's a science involved or an equation. But I want the story to be correct, right? And if I've done it, and especially in comics, but I think one can argue this about a lot of stories. Chess is not necessarily a bad metaphor, right? There are only a finite number of moves available. But that number is still vast. And then as the game progresses, right, the moves become more and more restricted by the choices that were made prior.
Correct. Yeah.
And a good story follows certain dramatic rules. It doesn't mean, and that doesn't mean that that's always going to be 2 + 2 = 4, but it does mean that if you are putting certain things in motion and you are telling the story truthfully and honoring it, then the complications and resolutions present themselves in ways that logical isn't the right word, because there's the creativity of the process is active, right? I am making choices, and sometimes I am making choices that's too easy, right? And I don't want to go easy. But the other part, certainly for me, and every writer works different. I work violently, heavily in the character space. I start with character first in almost every instance.
Yeah.
And so if I know my characters well, then they will suggest to me, or I will know, or however we want to describe the relationship between myself and fictional things that I've created, which is what a relationship between me and me. But, you know, if I put Forever in a certain situation, at this point, I've got a pretty good idea of what Forever's going to do, how she is going to respond.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make it, and that's not to say all choices are therefore made in that vacuum. The story has to go certain places. I know where I want to sort of lead it. I know where I'm heading. So I've got to make active decisions to get us there. Yeah. But in the moments of the story, you know, if I've done my job well, then the truth of what will happen in those moments are presented. They appear. So you talk about the end of the issue, and I was like, well, that's the truth of this moment, because in the structure that is this vast story we're telling, this was a thing that was swaying unresoled. There was this big old thread.
Jonah?
Yeah. And then
after all that heart-wrenching, 27, was it 27, 28 or 26?
Yeah, it's 27, 28.
27, 28.
And then he has the short story. And then and there's the little piece of prose fiction in Risen, though I forget which issue of Risen. So that sort of moves him out of that.
Where he goes with the little, where he's like,
where he's got Jens
in a lab, or I forget what.
Well, he's put in a detainment a camp. Yeah, it's a refugee camp run by Bittner, because they've got this plague outbreak, and they're basically trying to quarantine the populace and wait for everything to burn out. And of course, the problem there is, and the problem there is he's being tested. And if he's tested, it's not going to take very long for a genetic screen to be like, there's some crazy ass shit going on with these genes.
His blood works awfully
Carlisle-y. And the second that happens, he's in the shit, because he becomes what he was to Hawk back in issue 10 of the first run, right? He becomes a pawn in this political game. And worse, he's now got a son who is at that point very much an infant, right? And God knows what Malcolm would do if he goes, oh, I'm a grandfather? Well, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Yeah. Thank you. I will.
Thank you. I will now.
I will mold this into,
this shall be my new puppet, because I've lost my other ones.
So.
Thanks, Joanna. Because he's basically like, she's just his punching bag.
Oh, yeah. No, he's been punishing her for a while. Yeah. I love Abby's line, right? When she goes upstairs and like, so how was this shit served today? Hot or cold? And Joe's response being like, it doesn't matter. He makes me eat it anyway.
Yeah.
Malcolm is, not a happy guy when we come back to him 2 years later or whatnot.
I know. I like how like you turn the page and you're like, whoa, wait, a year went by. Wait, now I'm like, oh shit, we're moving. And it gives you this like feeling of, oh man, okay, we're going forward in time. Like this is like, we're moving now. Yes.
Status quo is changing.
We're freaking on the move. And it's so exciting because, you go to the image site for your pre-orders and all, like, and you see them all lined up, ready to go. I mean, it's very exciting because the first issue drops and you feel like we're on the move. And then like the momentum of just kind of getting back into it. And I was not able to do like the full reread like some of our other lovely Discord friends that are like, I just finished my second reread or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God. But I'm really impressed that I have the little bit of the memory that I do of all these pieces, because I was like, oh, I didn't feel like I was lost or anything. And I have to say that from the beginning of time, I am the type of comics reader that would only ever read things that were complete, with the exception of a few things, Lazarus being the big one, the main one. But it gives me that true traditional sense of being a comic book reader, like what my dear husband Oscar says. Yeah, I had to wait for each issue to come out and then reread them. And that's how I learned the world of the X-Men or whatever world he existed in 1990 or 88 or whatever, right? Like, he's like, because you didn't just read it once, like you had nothing else to read until the next issue. And you kept it and you read it and you read it and you knew it. And Lazarus is definitely one that I have done many rereads of, but it's I would say it's enjoyable every time. And because it's the medium of comics, you also catch new things because your eye will gravitate to different places on the page, and you don't rush to read it the way you do the first time because you want to know what happens and you can appreciate the art. And I will even dare say, being older, you see things differently.
Michael's work is so subtle and so elegant. And he conveys so much. Like the acting is so good.
It's so good.
That when Jo sees Michael, like her reaction and sort of that realization that she doesn't know what happened to him. These things happened, and 2 years later,
it's like, oh,
a year later, she's seeing him for the first time. There are a lot of questions that get raised. There are some more will be answered.
It's okay. I'm expecting my heart to be ripped out. It's fine. It's fine. All of you amazing creators do exactly that. You've done it multiple times to me, and I've healed. BK Vaughn, I told him when I talked to Brian, I was like, thank you. I don't know why I like your comics, because you kill everyone I love. So like, you guys just do that. Like, and I realized, wait, all the amazing greats seem to do that to us, yet we keep coming back for more.
I mean, yeah. I'll tell you what's going to hurt most here. It's not going to be who dies. It's going to be the revelation of who these people really are in some cases, and always were.
Yeah.
For every Jonah, there's somebody who goes the other way. And radicalization can happen on both sides, right?
Yeah. I mean, and again, not to bring us back to the darkness, but man, the parallels here are just way too much.
It is. This was not. I didn't think this would be the world I was writing it in when we started it in 2013.
Right.
I really didn't.
Yes. I mean, when you and I and Nicola were talking, and we talked about like, the fact you guys are writing this really fun heist, and writing it now versus writing it 20 years ago would have been so different, and the experience would have been different. And I kind of wonder like, oh gosh, because you did know how this is always going to end. But like the in-between, we're getting the Greg that's now been exposed to all these other things. So you wonder like, how is this changing it? And it's kind of, it's terrible, but it's kind of cool because you're like, ooh, what's Greg going to do with this? Because now it's like you can't even write this as fiction.
I mean,
we're living so much of it.
It's still on the bleeding edge of where we are. So, despite his best intentions, the muskrat isn't immortal, and won't be.
Okay.
And despite his best intentions, still doesn't have it all yet. Like it's still, we're still on the fiction side of it, but boy, howdy, does it feel like we're firmly in future documentary in ways.
Yeah. I always love the back matter, and I always love reading anything you write, obviously, but I love the fact that we got like, whoo, did we get a Rucka rant at the end of this issue? And it's funny because
I've been keeping my powder dry. Like I've been very careful about where I'm sort of opening that tap. I haven't been really doing it on Blue Sky. I haven't really been on the Discord because honestly, it's a little easy. Like there's just so much to be upset about. But when I sat down to write that back matter, and I say in the back matter, it's like, I'm writing this in April.
Yeah.
This thing's coming out in June. I don't know what it's going to look like.
Yes.
And there's so much coming that I'm going to mark it by. You need to know the following things about the date I am writing it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
You wrote that in April. Was that like when I saw you? Was that like around the same time?
I think it was around the same
April
time.
16. Yeah. I think that was actually the day I saw you.
Yeah.
To be honest.
So
That's wild.
It was.
So I may have like gave him like Rucka rant.
I think I wrote it before I saw you.
Rucka ranted you. Like, hey, I'm going to be seeing Mimi. What do we normally talk about? Oh yeah, we always do rants.
I had had some conversations with Alejandro sort of about, and when I sent it, and I also sent it to Jen because I was in Australia at the time. I sent it to Jen, and I was like, I don't know if this is too much, but then I circulated it because I was like, Michael, I'm putting your name on this. Everybody's name is on this if we're cool.
Yes.
And Michael being Michael, he was.
Oh yeah, Michael's like more fire.
Yeah, Michael. Exactly.
I've spoken to Michael.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, no.
I will just say, I really love that you're like, this is not for you. So we don't write this for you. You don't, this is our art.
You can go now.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think it's more than fair. If they don't know who you are by now, I actually have been surprised because the amount of convos you and I have had, the little that I do post on social, I had people really shocked that I was at the protest and that I lean, for lack of better terms, the way I do, or that I'm outspoken. I was like, really? Because I've been doing social justice for a really long time. Are you just not paying attention? Or you just only want to see, oh, this is a kung fu thing and that's it.
Yeah,
like
I don't want to know about the other thing.
Dave, and I'm like, I'm sorry, this is who I am. And so I've gotten some like deliberate unfollows and letting me know they're unfollowing. I'm like, thank you. You don't need to be here then.
Yeah,
that's not
a
for
choice.
you. That's a choice. Yeah. Like you don't have to listen, but also you cannot also tell me to shut up because
you don't,
not your choice.
Yeah.
That's not your,
I don't work for you.
Exactly.
And also I can't help but notice that a whole bunch of you guys over on that side of the, of the color spectrum, shall we say, jump up and down about, your freedom of expression and your right to say whatever you want, right up until somebody else says something you don't like.
Exactly.
Right up until somebody says to you, I disagree. Oh, well, then I don't have, you shouldn't have a chance.
Exactly. You're not allowed to say this.
Okay. So you're a liar and a hypocrite is what you're saying. Okay, fine. Knock yourself out.
This is the world we're in. Yeah. But now I do want to say I was flicking through the Netflix
You
And
were
of
flicking through the
course,
flicks?
yes, through the flicks. And of course, the very first trailer that's being thrown at us
Oh,
is
is
the
it?
beautiful and gorgeous and, humans that are on the screen running up staircases and
And
shooting and doing
stabbing and
cool
shooting.
things and just looking
Yeah.
cool in their
Seen a lot of
outfits.
Charlize.
Yeah, a
Seen a
lot
lot
of
of Charlize lately.
Charlize. And yeah, anyway, they look super hot. But Old Guard
She's
2.
been really busy this week.
Yes, I think she was on Hot Ones. Her and Uma.
Yeah. Yeah, she and Uma did Hot Ones. She was on Seth Meyer on
Cool.
Tuesday, I think.
Okay.
I believe she's out on the circuit. And it's weird because I don't remember any of this for the first one.
Well, the first one was such a hit
During
after the
COVID.
fact, and they were like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, this is freaking awesome! What this story be?" And then everyone's like, "Look, there's this amazing graphic novel.
Yeah.
Read this,"
Yeah.
which is interesting. I keep seeing it up on my Apple Books now.
Oh, really? Todd?
It's Old Guard, yeah, yeah.
Cool.
Like letting us know first issue. Hey, look at this because the movies
neat.
are out. But anyway,
If I had an ounce of
like
business
fun.
sense, I'd have written more. Fortunately,
well,
I
I
don't.
will tell people if you loved the Old Guard film and you started to read the book because of it, know that everything Greg writes is very entertaining and awesome because I have to say first of all, Old Guard 2 looks like so much fun. Everybody looks incredible in it.
It's a lot of fun.
So hot. I'm just like, whoo. But it's always exciting to see something kind of like get to come back and characters that we love seeing them on screen. So, there's that. So that will have dropped by the time this is out. So if you didn't catch that, definitely tune in on the Netflixy and always exciting to see
On the Flix du Nez.
Yes, exactly. And then we're just always excited, but I feel like for listeners that have never read a comic, it's interesting to me, even in this day and age, that people still don't understand what it is and that there is a wide range of genres and types of things. Like you don't have to be just only a Batman fan. There are things like the Old Guard that you would never have realized until you saw the film. And so it's fine. We'll take them, right? We'll take them if it's in the reverse. They got exposed by movies and then they're now finding comics.
However we get you, we'll take you. we here in comics, again, despite the effort of some big gatekeepers, it's a big tent, folks. Come inside. So
absolutely. And I will reiterate what I said at the beginning regarding your Front Towards Enemy newsletter. Oh, I had a question because my dear husband Oscar was like, "Oh, I hit reply and I don't ever expect." I go, "I don't think you can reply to those newsletters. Aren't they just like?"
Yeah,
inboxes?
I don't do comments. They just go in.
Yeah.
So you sign up and you get them.
He's all like, "I just told Greg and I don't expect any comments, but I don't know if he got that." I go, "I don't think that's how those." So you can see how many he actually subscribes to, right? Where he doesn't realize it. This is not an actual email from Greg. But
This is an option on. I'm using Ghost, and Ghost it's a big platform for these things. You can make them a paid thing and so on. This is a free newsletter and you can have, allow comments and so on. And I have them off. And the reason I have them off right now is simply, I don't have the time.
Yeah. To be able to interact.
Exactly. And I don't want to, it's just, look, you open up a comic section, you are obligated to curate it. Right?
Yes.
And I'm not going to turn to Oz, who, is the moderator on the Discord forum, and say, here's another thing for you to do.
Yeah, of course.
I can't do that. Not yet. Now, having said that, I'm trying to figure out some publication plans for the rest of the year and into next year, in particular around the new Kodiak novel and the one that I'm working on that'll follow that novel and things like that. And that might, at that point I may open up comments for certain things, or I may do a different newsletter that's just like, here's some drips and drabs of fiction. I am trying very I'm trying very hard right now to figure out how to sort of get the prose and the e-publishing working better, because I had a lovely conversation with a writer I know, Mike Shackle, who's on the Discord. Yeah, Mike's terrific, and he's terrifically talented.
And has written some of the stories and.
No, we actually haven't gotten him for a short yet, and I should have.
Really?
Yeah, I don't believe I got. Did he? I can't remember. This is the thing with how addled I am.
I know. No, I feel like in Risen. I could be wrong, or maybe I'm seeing his name in the Discord so much. I could be wrong. I'm often wrong, but
now I'm going to have to check.
Great writer, but yes. So
I know we got Lila and others. Yeah. So, but he and I were talking, and he's got his sort of traditional publishing stuff that is, traditional publishing, but he's been doing a lot of stuff that's directly ebook, and and had a lot of really terrific insights.
Yeah,
and
it's like another animal now. This whole
it really is, and there's a piece of me that's like, oh, maybe I need to start taking that a little more seriously.
I want to say this out loud on the podcast, because I feel like you are very generous with your time to so many people around you, especially just being able to comment. Like, I've seen you comment in length on the Discord to questions that like, these people they're true fans, right? There's people who say they're fans, but like, and I know you've talked about this before with me regarding like paid subscription for newsletters and your content. Yeah. And I feel like you are so generous with wanting to just say like, no, like this is what I create. But like, when I got your first newsletter, I was like, oh my God, I really miss reading Greg's writing. Like, I had this feeling, and I'm not just saying this because I like love you, but like, my students will tell you, like, I don't just say things, and you know this because you know me, you've known me for years, but like, I realized how much I missed your writing, like reading your words. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad I got it like a couple in, because then I had like 2 newsletters to read, and like, I feel like your time is valuable, and it would be fine to say, hey, for a paid subscription, there will be comments or this or that, or you get short stories. And I feel
but that's a different thing than the newsletter right now, right? It is nice of you to say that.
Open donations, then I think people would be like, yes, please, Rucka, if this just buys you your cup of tea to keep you writing these newsletters, let's do that. Like, and I know it feels like you're asking people, but I feel like people must feel how I feel, because I've got patrons in my Patreon that support me because I talk to you. And they're like, oh, we loved what you got Greg Rucka on the air for like 50 something episodes. And he generally is like, maybe I'll do podcasts. So like, I feel like you don't realize how many people miss your writing. And even though they're 5-minute reads, 10-minute reads, 1-minute reads, like, it takes you time, and your skill is so incredible that people want more of it. So I feel like, yes, getting the word out is one thing. That's a whole other animal.
You are being incredibly kind.
I'm not even that kind of a person.
I will take it under advisement.
Thank you. And I think all of your fans will agree with me in saying, a little,
right now, that newsletter, I don't see being anything other than free. Because it serves a primary purpose, and that primary purpose is to communicate with those people who like my work enough to have gone, I want to sign up for his newsletter, and presumably do so because they're interested in what I'm doing. So this is what I'm thinking about. This is what I'm working on. This is what I think is of interest. Here's something I think people should maybe give a little more attention to, and so on. like, you know, once this goes up, I will be able to actually link to it and say Mimi and I did a lovely conversation about and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good way to hype things.
Yeah.
Sure. I've thought about that, you know, I've thought about maybe going, I've had it would be a short novel, but I've had this idea bouncing around in my head for years and years and years. And I've thought about maybe, you know, if I write that, maybe what I'll do is I'll release it that way and be like, here's a chapter a week sort of thing.
Yeah.
And being able to sort of preview stuff like, you know, here's the first 3 chapters of Whisper, you know,
mm-hmm.
And being able to do that before the book comes out, and like, can you get out there and try to get sort of people who are signed up for the newsletter right now. And the newsletter's only been around for really 2.5 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yes,
and not a lot of people know about it because I mean, what's my social media imprint? It's Blue Sky. Or it's
I know,
Discord.
and those of us on the other social who try to remind people also don't have like a huge imprint because I'm not this huge social media.
I think it's.
But you should let
listed.
Rachel Maddow know. She said she would read anything Greg Rucka wrote, even if it was on a cocktail napkin. I'll never forget that.
She said it years ago, though.
But
and I think she's got other fires.
I think there's fact to that, though. But you know what I mean? Like, I just want to remind you, like, because we haven't got to talk weekly like we used to and anything, that
it's been a while.
People who get your newsletter are probably feeling a lot of what I feel, which is like, wow, I'm so excited and grateful to be able to read your words again, because there's a lot of writers out there and they're not all at your caliber, sir. That's just a fact. It's just a fact. And the Fallen, oh my goodness, like, it's everything we wanted. Okay, it's everything we wanted. And everybody on the Discord's also going, yes. So thank you for that. And, thank you to Michael for getting back on track.
So, yes.
True. But you say worth the wait. It is worth the wait. We're here. We're here.
We're still scheduled properly.
Awesome.
We are still on schedule. Everything is still going according to plan. So I am hoping that we'll be able, at least the first 2 arcs.
Yeah.
Everything will be coming out as planned.
Yes.
The big question for me is how issue 20 is going to go.
Right.
If issue 20 is going to end up being like, it's got to be a double size or something like that.
Yeah. So. Well, we're all here for it, and we are grateful for you. And I'm so glad to be able to podcast with you again. Although, of course, highlight of the trip, you know, being with Nicola, podcasting with you, having that lovely breakfast and brunch. I mean, just, it was the warm, heated blanket on a cold day. Like, it was just like the best way to kind of wrap our trip.
It was a nice time.
Oh my goodness.
It was great seeing you and Oscar. So
it was kind of cool that we were in Australia too. It was like, a little bit of a flex.
Well, hopefully we can talk hopefully we can talk again in another couple weeks.
Yeah, so. I am here for it. And thank you again. And everybody tune in, read, download, and pre-order and all the things. I'll link all that stuffs here for you.
Sign up for the newsletter.
Absolutely. Sign up for the newsletter. That'll be my big push.
Front towards enemy.
Front towards enemy.
Yes. It's through Ghost. So
the Mimi and Greg Show, everybody. We're back.
Thank you, guys.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram or Facebook.